about a piece of music by an American composer by the name of Steve Reich. He was born in 1936. He is still alive. And the piece of music that we're talking about is called Different Trains, and it was written in 1988. So you guys all should have this piece of paper in front of you. So make sure that you can see that. And these are the liner notes. What are liner notes? Do you guys know? Yeah.
Maybe like what the person says.
They're what the person says where. What are they lining?
In the song.
So if you get a CD, or in the case of this, it would have been a tape, and you take this little booklet out in the front, and you open it up, and all of the information about the specific CD, that's going to be your liner notes. So what you're looking at in front of you, these are the liner notes, and this is what the composer actually wrote about this piece of music. So rather than me telling you about what the music's going to seem like, we're just going to read this, which is what he says about it, and then we can kind of make some decisions based on that, all right? So, liner notes. Different Trains, 1988. Can I have somebody read that first paragraph? Aaron?
Different Trains for String Quartet and Tape begins a new way of composing that has its roots in my early tape speeches pieces, It's Gonna Rain and Come Out. The basic idea is that speech recordings generate the musical material for musical instruments.
All right, so string quartet. What's in a string quartet? Strings. Which strings specifically?
Violin.
Violin, cello,
Bass.
no double bass. So there are two violins, there's a cello, and there is a viola. So those are going to be our four stringed instruments. So we're going to see those playing in a minute. Then it says for string quartet and tape. Do you usually see tape as a musical instrument?
No.
What kind of tape are they talking about? Like a cassette tape, like a recorded tape. So what you're going to hear is you're going to hear the string players actually playing, and then he has made various recordings, and the recordings are going to be involved within this piece of music as well. Aaron, read that last sentence again, please, because it's really important. Pay attention.
The basic idea is that speech recordings generate the musical material for musical instruments.
All right, so speech recordings, so people talking, are going to generate the musical material for then the musical instruments that we're going to play. So we're going to listen for that. All right, can I have somebody read that second paragraph? Lauren?
The concept
Steve Reich, that's the composer, August 1988. So keep all of that in your mind. He talks about what's happening, and we are just going to listen to it, all right? While we're listening, I want you to really engage. Don't just let the music wash over you, but actually get your minds on it. Listen very carefully. Again, we're just going to listen to the middle movement. It's about 7.5 minutes long or so, and then we're going to have a conversation about it. So you have some extra space there if you want to write down notes as we're doing this. If you want to write down questions that we had, if you would rather just listen and you think that you can participate in the conversation that way, that is completely fine as well. Okay, and we are actually going to listen to a more modern recording than the original. So this was written in 1988. We're going to watch a video of this being recorded in 2005. So you can watch it as it goes. It shows the words that he's actually using, so it may be helpful to hear that. If you'd rather just close your eyes, I'm fine with that as well. Okay. So about 7.5 minutes, the middle movement. Listen, watch, let me know what we think. All right, guys. What do you think? Aaron.
I feel that the music did a really good job of setting the mood and tone of the music,
Okay.
along with the voice recording.
Good, good. Mason?
I would say that the portrayal of the content was great, but that it didn't fulfill the author's expectations, or the artist's expectations, rather. He said at the ending of his liner notes that it is a direction that I expect will lead to a new kind of documentary music video theater in the not too distant future, and it hasn't caught on as far as I'm aware.
Okay, that's a very interesting point. The rest of you guys, what do you think? Is this something or some type of thing that you see now? I mean, this was written 20 years ago.
No.
It's obscure to some extent.
It is obscure to some extent. That's very, very true. What about this concept of taping something and incorporating that into music?
Auto-tune.
What's that?
Like, a lot of videos are taking news broadcasts and changing the tone of what the person is saying and making it into music.
Very good. So you guys know of any songs like that? That tape something, or that take a news broadcast, or take like a clip from a movie, incorporated into their songs? Okay, we're gonna look at a couple of those in a minute here. So Jason, I think you're right that it hasn't caught on in the large scale, but I think little pieces of this, as far as actual taking recordings and putting them into music, that's something that we do continue to see. Yep.
I know songs not with voice recordings, but with movie recordings that they take from the movie and put it into music videos.
Okay, can you think of any specific examples?
Yeah, they're all by Linkin Park.
Okay.
Iridescent, You Divide. So.
Good, good. Yeah, I've got a list that I'm gonna show you guys in a minute, and I've got those Linkin Park songs there as well, definitely. Yeah, they definitely do that. They also record or take recordings from previous music, right? So a song that came out a while ago, and then take that specific piece of music and incorporate it into a new song, so if you guys know anything about that. Now, what is his process as far as composing this? What's happening? What's the relationship between the words, between those recordings, and between what's happening with the instruments? All right.
It's as if the instruments are speaking along with the person, so like what they're saying, their intonation is the same how the instrument is played.
Good. So what does he say about that in his liner notes? Yeah.
In order to combine the tape speech with the string instruments, I selected small speech samples that are more or less clearly pitched and then notated them as accurately as possible in musical notation.
Okay, do you feel that? Do you see that? Do you hear that when this is happening? Okay, and within the liner notes, I didn't include it here, but he actually takes a specific sample and shows the actual music, that this is what the person's saying in the recording, and then here's how he's gonna notate it in the music. Good. What else did you notice?
Constant use of repetition.
Okay.
Because he had a lot of material that he was presenting, but much of that, at least much of what seemed important, was said multiple times.
Good. And so if you listen to a lot of righteous music and a lot of other composers from the same time period, that's definitely something that's going to happen. Is that here's this motive, and then repeat, and then slowly change it to a different motive. Good. What else? What about the fact that we watched it on video? Because that's not the way that he originally did it, right? And he says he recorded the people speaking, he recorded the trains, he recorded the quartets, he stuck them all together. Here's the tape. Everybody listen. What do you think the composer would think about the fact that we're watching it now?
I think it would help carry over the message a little bit more because not only do you have like audio of the Holocaust, but now you have actual footage of it.
Okay, very good. Yep.
But it does supplant what you're thinking, the images that the music and the movie bring to your head with something that's already being presented to you in a nice, encapsulated form.
Very, very true. Do you think that you would have a different thought about it or a different reaction to it if you were just listening versus watching it? Lauren, were you gonna say something?
I think that he would think that the video kind of defeated his whole purpose of like you hear the things happening, you create your own visual in your head, and now that you're seeing it, it's kind of like they're putting that version in your head.
Gotcha. Does it help to be able to read the words? For me, it does. When I just listen to it, I have a hard time making out exactly what they're saying. So for me, it's helpful to see the words. But again, you know, maybe that's not what his intent actually was. Did you guys hear the trains?
Yes.
What reaction does that produce? Does that do anything to hear those trains? Yeah.
There's a sense of some being in a place, hearing surroundings, some music is.
Good. Yep.
I think he gives a sense of urgency.
Okay. Do you guys remember what he said the other movements were going to be about? Because this is the middle movement, right? So what is this movement about?
During the war.
During the war. And the people that we're hearing speaking are who? Holocaust survivors who are now living in America, but they were kids at the time of the war, right? And they're going on these trains, and where are they going on the trains?
Concentration
To the
camps.
concentration camps, okay? What does he say about the first movement? What do you think that's going to be about? America before the war. So who's that going to involve if we listen to that one? Look back at the beginning. What does it say? Jimmy?
The composer himself.
The composer himself. And what is he doing?
He's going on the train to New York to LA
New York to LA. Why?
to live with his parents because they're divorced and they live in different cities.
Exactly right. So at that time, does he have anything to do with the war?
No.
No. But why is he tying these two things together?
Because people in Hong Kong, like, they travel from trains to go to the concentration camps, and he's traveling from the train to go to his mom or his dad.
Yeah.
I feel it's kind of interesting because he said that if if he were in Europe, he'd be riding different trains, and I feel that he's kind of comparing himself to that. And the fact that he mentions that his parents are divorced and that he often goes between them, I would think that under normal circumstances we would feel pity for him, but then he compares it to the Holocaust and realizes that he has life pretty easy compared to him.
Good.
I was going to say that I feel it's a very emotional piece, just in the way that we saw it presented, but also in what he says about his circumstances, as Aaron pointed out, that he didn't have a perfect life as a child, but he contrasted that with all of the horrendous things that were going on in a part of the world that he had very little idea about. And so it makes you look at what you have and be either thankful or at least thoughtful.
Mm-hmm. What other piece of information does he provide? What does he tell us about himself?
That he is Jewish.
That he's Jewish. Okay, what year did I say that he was born in? Did you guys catch it? 1936. Okay, so he's writing this, but he's thinking about the time when he was a child. He says that he's making these trips between when and when?
1939 and 1942.
1939 and 1942, right? So he's a child at this time. He's making the trips on the train. He's going back and forth, but he tells us he's Jewish. And if he had been in Europe at that time, what would have been happening? Yeah, so that's part of what he's trying to say here. You know, I'm lucky I'm in the United States. I'm making, you know, what appear to me these, you know, maybe not so easy trips back and forth. But if I had been in Europe, I'm Jewish, I'm this age, this is what would have been happening to me again. So he presents his story, and then, you know, here's this other story as well. Okay, good. Any other thoughts about that? I'm going to show you guys. We're going to split for just a second, okay? And we are going to go back to Aaron's idea of taking these recorded things from popular music and see kind of if there's a difference here or if there's a similarity. So, have you guys heard of sampling? Do you know what I'm talking about if I say sampling? Hey, Nick, what's it mean?
Well, Kanye West uses it in a lot of his music, and sampling is basically taking a piece of music from an older song or movement or composition and incorporating it into your own song that you basically add.
Good. So you guys all know what he's talking about when we say sampling? Okay. So we've got music sampling, which we hear a lot. Like you said, Kanye West uses it, right? We take pieces of music from one, we put it into our new songs. We also have verbal sampling. So we have words. So we have the movie clips, or we have news broadcasts. So I have for you a list of various people that use this type of spoken word sampling. So I just want you to look. I tried to pick people that you probably have some awareness of. And these are all of kind of the modern bands and artists that have done these types of things. So Bare Naked Ladies, the Beatles do it a little bit. Right? The Beatles use a broadcast from King Lear, from the BBC production of King Lear and I'm the Walrus. David Bowie, a whole bunch of modern artists that do kind of this same type of thing. So like I said, we're gonna listen to the Gwen Stefani piece, just kind of the end of it where she does this. I want you guys to watch, I want you to listen, I want you to think about how that's related to different trainings that we listen to, and see, does it fulfill what Steve Reich says, that it's a new type of music video theater that will take on, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so does this fulfill that, or is it something just completely off, all right? Gwen Stefani. This is from 2005. It's a live video when she was in Japan. I'm gonna fast forward it right to the end. Play. Okay, what is your hair? What is she is? Yep.
Well, she does use some spoken word clips or pieces.
Okay.
But I wanted to note a distinction that at least I made in my head. He does say that, or at least he implies that his piece is going to be significant in changing the stream of popular documentary music in this direction. And I wanted to emphasize the word documentary, and therefore to separate it out into two groups. Because when you showed the list, you mentioned names that came about long before he wrote this piece. And so I would like to say that the Beatles, for instance, had more of an influence on the popular culture and music aspect of this. And that his documentary style is something completely separate from that.
Okay.
And I don't know how popular that specifically is for that genre.
Okay, what do the rest of you guys think? What piece of, or what clip is she using here? Could you guys make it out? Let's listen to it again. Listen really, really carefully.
Isn't it Martin Luther King?
It is Martin Luther
It's
King.
like
What of Martin Luther King? It is the I Have the Dream speech. Okay, listen. Oh, all men are created equal. All right, so you hear that? You hear Martin Luther in there?
Yeah.
Okay, does that change what we're thinking about it? How?
Well, I would still stand by the argument that the Beatles and that line and that lineage had a more prominent influence in this popular culture, or popular music rather. But it does, at least to a certain degree, document a piece of history and show its relevance in the present.
Okay, the rest of you guys, what do you think? Is this relevant? Does this have any relationship at all to what Steve Reich did? Or do you think they're just completely separate?
I think the concepts are the same, but in a way, this song carried across more of the meaning of the speech than the Different Trains song did with the Holocaust.
Okay.
I'd actually oppose that. I think this song doesn't have as much of an impact as the other song did, considering that this sampling was used throughout the whole song and this was just a part of it.
Okay. Yep.
But the sampling in the other song, you would need some sort of context or some sort of background, because in the other song, the only clips were 1940, marching to Holland, things along those lines, and the train noises. And the only thing that I can see that carries across the mood of the Holocaust is the music itself, while this has more definite clips, has longer clips, and the whole song is probably about what Martin Luther King had to say.
I think the sample just adds to the song itself instead of in the Different Trains piece, where the music was incorporating so much of the recordings that they became like this was more like an add-on.
Gotcha. So this is more of an add-on in the Different Trains. It was the piece was made up of the recording. Yeah, Jessica?
I feel like because it's Gwen Stefani, because it's at a concert, because it's like pop music, it's taken more as part of a song than an actual message in the song.
Okay.
And then the Different Trains, it was the words were more of the song than the music was the song. But this one, it's the music and the lyrics than the message in the song.
Gotcha. If we just listen to this, if I had just turned on the recording, we're not watching it, I hadn't given you any background, would you have been able to understand what she was talking about in the Gwen Stefani piece? Maybe not. What if I had just given you the Steve Reich piece and we hadn't watched it and I hadn't told you anything? I said, here's music, let's listen. Would you know what was going on?
Yes.
You think so?
Yeah.
You think that it conveys it well enough that you can tell exactly?
Because someone that was speaking in the clip was telling the year,
Mhm.
and then it was also saying like things that we've learned about the Holocaust. So
Okay.
And there's also that theme of repetition when he repeats the date and the events that happened. That allows us to get better grasp on the events that actually occurred.
Okay. Okay, so when he's repeating 1940, enough times that you're gonna get it. Yep.
Admitted